Hi, good evening again. At this point, I want to ask our panelists to join the conversation and welcome everyone for joining and to learn more about the BQGreen project, which is an ambitious project down in the south side of Williamsburg. So again, my name is Katie Denny Horowitz. I'm the Executive Director of the North Brooklyn Parks Alliance. We have been focusing this fall on exploring infrastructure projects in North Brooklyn, so specifically Greenpoint and Williamsburg. We've been doing that as the city and indeed the country are taking a new look at the state that we're in, the capital projects that were planned, the big ideas that we had earlier in 2020 might be different today. And so here in North Brooklyn, we looked at three very ambitious projects, very big projects in our park spaces. We started off with the Under the K Bridge Park in October. Then last month, we looked at the Bushwick Inlet Park and where we are at with that large Williamsburg waterfront parcel. And tonight, again, we're going to talk about BQGreen. Many of you might say, well, what is BQGreen? It doesn't exist yet, is what you're going to learn tonight. And so BQGreen is a conversation that I recall hearing about when I first got involved with the North Brooklyn Parks Alliance, formerly Open Space Alliance, 10 years ago, when I was sitting down with Diana Reyna at a community committee meeting. And I hear her talking about decking over the BQE, and I'm thinking, what does decking mean? What BQE, where is this? What is she talking about? Fast forward 10 years, and we are here to really make that idea into more of a reality. And so Melvin Estrella, who's also joining us, has directed a film that I'd like to get started, which in 7 quick minutes really goes deep into the issues of what the project means to the community of Southside. And it was also done in partnership with 2 North Brooklyn Parks Alliance board members, Kate Bernstein and Dewey Thompson, who I hope are joining us tonight as well. So if you could bear with me, I'm going to share my screen one more time.
Les voy a hacer una pregunta de vida o muerte sobre Williamsburg, Brooklyn. No ese Williamsburg, sino el mismo vecindario a pocas cuadras al sur. Y aquí está la pregunta. ¿Cómo se cura una comunidad dividida en 2? Por una herida infecciosa y peligrosa. Década de 1940, Robert Moses dirigió la construcción de la autopista BQE, Brooklyn Queens Expressway, una carretera de 6 carriles a través del vibrante e históricamente vecindario inmigrante de Sur Williamsburg, o como nos gusta llamarlo, los Sures. El BQE dividió la comunidad que en una época fue unida, y la carretera se convirtió en una batalla violenta de este territorio. Los pocos parques se encuentran en la orilla de esta carretera, donde se pueden rastrar las tasas más altas de asma en la ciudad a lo largo de su camino. Mi nombre es Diana Reyna, nací y fui criada en los Sures, y en esos parques jugaba. Una vez de niña, sosteniendo la mano de mi madre, salí corriendo de este parque cuando estallaron los disparos. En el 2010 representé a los Sures como la primera mujer dominicana en el ayuntamiento. Tuve una idea para curar esta herida. Volveríamos a conectar los 2 lados del vecindario, construyendo un nuevo parque de espacios verdes muy necesarios para remediar la epidemia de asma crónica. La idea es cubrir una sección de BQE con 4,5 acres, con hermosos espacios verdes de parques. Lo llamamos BQGreen, el Parque Verde. Es una visión grande y ambiciosa y no será fácil.
outside. I am a child of Los Sures. These are the children of Los Sures. A city that cares about its children would not allow for this open wound to continue to exist. We are calling upon Mayor de Blasio and Governor of this great state of New York, Governor Cuomo, to pay attention once and for all.
When I started working at Woodhull in 1995, I was shocked by the asthma prevalence. It struck me as an epidemic. Just looking at the magnitude of the problems and the enormousness of the problems, that it needed a tremendous effort in the hospital, in the community, in the schools, advocating for better air quality.
Good afternoon. My name is Hayden Melendez, and I was born and raised in this community. And I am here today because of this. All my life, I had to carry this asthma pump everywhere I went. And I'm here for the future generation, the kids behind me, and the kids of the world, to breathe clean air. It's not fair. I'm not asking you, I'm demanding. It's time to make a change. We need to breathe clean air.
And the question is, where is the priority for these children? Where is the voice for these children? Who's going to stand up for these children? Who's going to stand up for all of these children who are suffering for asthma, who don't have a place to play, and whose parks and playgrounds are divided by the BQE?
Don't get mistaken that the gentrification in this district has wiped us all out. We are pockets of culture, of history, of significance that need attention as well. For too long, we've seen a city that has looked to build green space and open space in areas that are much more affluent and much more white. What we don't see is those investments happening in communities like this one. We're not going to take being number 3 in asthma rates. We want to be number 3 in the amount of park space that we have in this community.
En el 2017, fui vicepresidenta del condado de Brooklyn y todavía estaba trabajando para que el BQGreen sucediera, con elegidos locales y organizaciones comunitarias como El Puente, Los Sures, St. Nick's y North Brooklyn Parks Alliance, luchando junto a mí todo el tiempo.
Well, I think the BQGreen is an exciting and dynamic project. I love it because it reflects an authentic engagement of the community there today, and their needs and priorities.
So the idea is to really bring this public amenity into a community that's been blighted by infrastructure. So you can see the overall vision. You know, those bridges that cross the neighborhood are actually encapsulated within this park space. So when we had a lot of meetings with the community, what they asked for was flower gardens and venture playgrounds, some passive areas, places for barbecuing, and then this active open space. I'd say the active open space was one of the main components that was really most desired.
Hoy el distrito está representado por el concejal de la ciudad, Antonio Reynoso.
I think that the city needs to see it the way I see it. So when it comes to parkland, I really think it's about political capital there as well, is what neighborhoods make the most noise. So these conversations need to continue to happen. The community needs to stand up, rise up. Our partners need to come out and continue to support us. We'll talk about how we got it done ultimately, and I think we can get there.
¿Qué se necesitará para sanar esta herida que atraviesa los sures? ¿Cuál es el costo de la continua devastación económica y una epidemia de salud continua? ¿Cuándo recibirán parques y servicios los barrios marginados como el vecindario más rico y gentrificado del lado norte de Williamsburg? Pa'lante, mi gente, es hora de hacer realidad BQGreen.
So thank you, Melvin and Kate and Dewey, for that beautiful film. There is a lot to unpack there, both in history and in the future. And to help us discuss this and lead this conversation, we invited a dear friend of mine, Teresa Gonzalez, who is, I'm very pleased to introduce as a new North Brooklyn Parks Alliance board member, also born and raised in Williamsburg, and has her own strategic consulting firm, Daly Gonzalez. And I wanted to welcome Teresa, who's going to introduce our panelists. So thank you, Teresa, and take it away.
Thank you so much, Katie. And I cannot tell you, it takes a lot for me to watch that and not shed a tear. I myself am also a child of Los Sures, so this means a lot to me, and I thank you all for letting me lead this conversation. I'm going to just very quickly introduce the panelists and get into the meat of this, which is what is BQGreen, why does this matter, and where do we go from here? So I want to start with one of my favorite people, Dr. Frances Lucerna, who is a pioneer of community-driven arts and education. In 1982, she co-founded, along with the great Luis Gardena Acosta and Gino Maldonado, El Puente, which is a nationally recognized human rights organization dedicated to nurturing Indigenous leadership and promoting self-determination. Love that word, thank you. In 1993, she became the founding principal of El Puente Academy for Peace and Justice, the first public school in the nation dedicated to human rights. And thank you so much for being here, Frances. I can call you Frances. Do I have to say Dr. Lucena? I'm happy to do that too. Next, I'd love to welcome the Queen, Diana Reina. Needless to say, she probably doesn't need a lot of an introduction, but I'll do it anyway. So over 20 years, she's worked on behalf of Brooklyn and Queens communities, first as a first Dominican council member in the council, and council member for the 34th Council District from 2001 to 2013, and then as Deputy Brooklyn Borough President from 2014 to 2017. She was also a female district leader, state committee member for the 53rd Assembly District, and she now runs her own strategic consulting firm called Diana Reina Strategic Consulting. She's also an amazingly dear friend of mine, and I'm grateful to have her in my life, so thank you, Diana. Jonathan Vascones, a new friend who I'm really excited to know, serves as M&T Bank's Regional Community Reinvestment Act Officer for New York, as well as managing the M&T Charitable Foundation's grants to nonprofits, servicing mostly low to moderate income communities in New York and Long Island. And we're excited to have you. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Melvin Estrella, also a fellow Williamsburg person, Los Sures all the way, is a cinematographer and an award-winning producer. His films enjoy prestigious premieres and worldwide distribution. He grew up on the South Side and was involved in the re-release of a 1984 documentary called Living Los Sures about pre-gentrification Williamsburg. Thank you, Melvin, and the film that we just screened was very much thanks to you, so thank you for putting that together for us. And last but not least, and I promise I have your bio here, I just need to find it, is our dear friend from the 11th Street Bridge Project. If you bear with me, I'm gonna give you the quick and dirty on our friend Vaughn from the 11th Street Bridge Project. Vaughn is the, Vaughn Perry is the Equitable Development Manager of the 11th Street Bridge Project. And he's gonna give us a overview of that project, which actually is in DC, and give us some hope on the fact that this kind of project with enough community support and enough dedication, projects such as these can be built. So thank you everyone for joining. Really excited to be having this conversation now. And so I wanted to just start with briefly setting the stage, right? So you saw the video, it gave you a taste of what we're talking about, but let's take a few steps back here and talk about the environmental justice movement in Williamsburg. I think the best person to do that would be Francis. So Francis, can you give us a little bit of a taste of how we got to the point where the BQGreen became a project that was necessary, quite frankly, for the health and well-being of our community?
Thank you, Teresa, and it's really an honor to be part of this panel and to really be talking about something as visionary and as important as the BQGreen. I think to really understand the environmental justice movement in the south side of Williamsburg, Los Udes as we call it, home, is just to really put it in the context of a really iconic and long and powerful legacy of community-led struggles to address social inequities and injustices that impacted our community, that really started in the 60s and 70s and really emanated out of the churches. And that's where our community congregated, right? Most prominently Transfiguration and Peter and Paul. And they were hubs for liberation theology, which was really about engaging the community and particularly young people like myself and Gino and Luis, you know, in campaigns in the community-led campaigns to address issues like fair and decent housing, early childhood education, access to healthcare, and programs for youth. We were involved in that. And it was out of that really, and from that movement and by community leaders who we became, right, as we moved on, that really founded iconic organizations that still exist and are really the powerhouse of this whole movement, and certainly the EJ movement, like Los Udes, Nuestros Niños, and El Puente. El Puente was founded in the early 80s, and I think it's really important to really know what Los Udes looked like at that time. And most of, you know, the south side of Williamsburg, it really was devastated. Now, it was devastated by the cuts, the Reagan cuts, but the infrastructure was totally decimated. There were no trees. Their parks were totally in disarray, mostly filled with crack vials, not places where you would go for anyone, let alone children. The schools were failing. We had our healthcare system in total disarray. And yet in all, there were the people and these organizations like El Puente and others that were there and that really were there to empower, to really bring the community together, to really create spaces where our community, our people, could really not only dream for what they wanted in the community, but really be able to organize, mobilize to make that happen. And so that's what El Puente really was committed to do, to first and foremost nurture indigenous leadership and to empower a community-led movement to address the impacts that were impacting our lives because of social and racial inequities for self-determination. In the last 40 years, we have really led iconic campaigns, and particularly in the forefront and in for environmental justice. We've taken a citizen science approach to engaging young people and families in projects where they themselves collect data, conduct research, educate the community, organize and mobilize for changes. And the most important part of this is to form powerful coalitions of community organizations to really make sure that those things happen. In our history, our environmental justice history, air quality and the impact that it has had, particularly in terms of the quality of the health of our people, has really been uppermost, our concern. I think the unbelievable rates of respiratory disease and asthma has been a historical plague in our community. And certainly in light of COVID-19, we understand that has really played a big part of really understanding the more deeper underpinnings of inequity that we have and continue and have to address. And I think the BQGreen is a perfect example of that. I think just to really kind of put it in context, you know, some of those big campaigns that I think really are studies now in terms of people's movement for environmental justice have included the stopping of the building of a 55-story incinerator in the 90s in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. It was legislated. And we put together a historical coalition led by our late founder, Luis Gardner Costa, and a nationally recognized environmental justice leader, that brought all the communities, including the Hasidic community, together in a common cause for the air and the well-being of our children. And it was really through the efforts of CAFE and also a group of young people from El Puente called the Toxic Avengers, who really uncovered it. And they became a national rage, right? That we were able to stop the building of that legislated incinerator. We also did a community-led health study of the respiratory disease in our community that really engaged mothers in the community, and it was peer-reviewed and published in the American Journal of Medicine. We created the first garden. Open space obviously is a big issue, and green spaces for our community has direct implications, again, with this issue of the health crisis in our community. And then we planted 100 trees in the community, a community where there were no trees. And then now, and it leads right up to 2011, when we inaugurated what we call the Green Light Initiative. It really was a community-led effort, again, to really flip the narrative of gentrification to one of disempowerment to empowerment, and really formed committees of community folks and community organizations to really create a movement to green and grow and a sustainable and vibrant Los Sures. Out of that really has come our most recent and I think most applicable campaign to the BQGreen and the vision of it. And that's Our Air Nuestros Aire campaign. It really is a project, again, a citizen science project to monitor the air quality of the playgrounds that you saw in that film that line the BQE. And there's one in particular right across the street from El Puente that is at the intersect of the BQGreen, the BQE and the Williamsburg Bridge. We did an air quality monitoring project for a year. There was a report of the findings that really affirmed the high levels of toxins and particulate matter in the air. And from that, we together with our advisory groups that are community-based, created a 5-point action platform for community wellness and resiliency. That really includes mitigation plans to really address the issue of the air quality in our neighborhood. And I think the BQGreen is really at the heart of that, and its vision. I know that there'll be an opportunity later on in the series that's coming up for a more deeper dive into our Air Nuestro Aire campaign. But I think that really hopefully sets the context for where we are today and what we are going to be really looking at in terms of the BQGreen and the vision for our community.
It absolutely does. Thank you, Frances. And I think, you know, everything that you're talking about very much points to the fact that our community, this isn't new, right? The fight for environmental justice, the fight for social justice, the fight for public health, right, in a way that is equitable, isn't a new phrase, isn't a new thought, but a lot of folks in our community have been doing it for decades. So I think that's a really important point, which brings me to Diana. So this call, as I mentioned, for like just social and environmental justice is not a new concept. How did this shape your work as a public figure, as a council member, and ultimately as the person that's the most visible and vocal champion on the BQGreen? Anytime I say BQGreen, people automatically say Diana Reyna. So talk to us a bit about everything that Frances said is really rooted in the fact that our community has been in the forefront for action around environmental justice and public health. How did that shape who you are, and how did we get to this BQGreen project?
Thank you, Teresa. I want to just, thank all the panelists for this opportunity to be able to really reignite what is this particular social justice movement at a level that, 13, 14 years ago, it was very lonely, right? Few people understood what this meant. Government definitely didn't respond to what would be or how to respond to tracking what are social benefits of social justice, right? Because it's not a measurable item, black and white, the way government is used to doing things. I have to preface, hearing Francis talk about transfiguration and remembering as a youth, part of our youth groups in churches and community organizing, we didn't wait for government to respond to getting services in our community. And my earliest recollection of organizing around cleaning our streets, something as fundamental as cleaning our streets, our public streets. And we took to the streets with brooms, with dustpans from home. We would purchase them. And all you saw were these, groups of families just coming out at the same time. And it was a call to action to do something about the filth that the city was not responding to. That's my earliest recollection of environmental and social justice. Moving forward, the Radiac protests, as a young woman working in politics and understanding the importance of protesting, being able to affect change, using government and using the power of people. Hundreds of people joined in that effort from the community. And we won that fight, right? To be able to give people hope, right? That it does matter when we participate and work together. And leading up to what was having elected to represent, with the privilege of representing my community, I was now afforded a seat as the driver, right? And that is tremendous power. And to be able to do some right from the wrongs of the past, right? My childhood shapes a lot of what I worked on. My experiences, having gone through what would be eviction, no heat, no hot water in our apartment, a landlord abandonment, right? You suffer it all. And today those stories are still alive. And so it was clear to me that we wanted to be reactive to those issues, right? That were plaguing our community, but we also needed to be proactive. And 2005 was a monumental time because we were undergoing what would be the largest in history rezoning the city had ever done. 175 blocks, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. And this particular rezoning and all of its public hearings leading up to what would be a vote, a fundamental vote that would change the landscape, geography of our community. But keeping in mind that the development pressure had already begun prior to that vote. And the development was very obvious around a very specific area. It was around McCarran Park. So this view of McCarran that was wide open was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. My son pointed it out when he was maybe 2 years old and we were at McCarran, and he said, "Mommy, where's this city? Where are we?" Right? And I didn't realize it was the buildings going up around the park that made it look like a different setting. He thought we were in Manhattan. And so now we have what would be this rezoning and the issue of equity. We were fighting for affordable housing, open space, infrastructure. The issue is that everything was so divided into segments so that The Williamsburg in the south had what would be affordable housing. The waterfront would have what would be the parks. You know, up further north would have what would be new development. It was just not the comprehensive plan that I had hoped for, but nonetheless, we were going to be able to get further amenities. And I was disappointed with the lack of open space that we were afforded through that rezoning for the South Side. And no matter how much we advocated for what would be all these different services, open space was probably the least we were able to achieve. That particular disappointment turned into what would be an advocacy campaign. And I dedicated what would be resources in 2006 with council expense funding to study the area. It was an RFP process. We were very lucky to have what is a talented and skilled architecture firm, landscape architecture firm, D-Land Studios, of WBE in the city of New York. And through their efforts, being able to come together with all these professional consultants. So by 2010, the report was finally published. We had our very own feasibility study led by community, because the community held what would be meetings and interviews with the landscape architect, and being able to understand the layers of where the challenges were and what could be the possible solutions. The opportunity to be able to hear people talk about public safety, mothers that did not care for the streets that didn't have perhaps crossings, safer crossings, or didn't have traffic lights or stop signs that were appropriate. They were seeking better 10-minute walk to your park, right? And the park that they were referring to were slithers of tot lots along the BQE. So you could imagine it's not the ideal place to go, but this is what we have. And once you start getting used to what you have, you think that's all you can have, right? So this gave them the opportunity to be at the table, right? To be able to provide us with what their shared experience is. We were able to hear comments about how unsafe people felt, or how hot the sidewalks were because we didn't have trees. Our parks had not been touched since the 70s. We had inequities everywhere and asthma sprawling through households. We have a school right next door. We have daycare centers nearby. These are the spaces that our children use, and we owe them better. And so these particular spaces became what would be the starting point. It's not all we can have, and we were able to showcase that in this study. And now you could just imagine, you know, having this fancy book to be able to shop around. I made sure that we had an opportunity to convene the meeting before I left the council, to be able to give people that hope that this will continue. And then getting to Borough Hall to be able to work with the borough president on prioritizing this.
Diana, I'm gonna ask you to hold on to where we are with it now, because I would love for that to kind of close out. I want people to understand that this isn't dead. So I'm gonna ask if you can hold on. I'm gonna move on to Melvin Estrella, who I think can add to the conversation. Right, so right now we're at the, Diana hauled ass like she does. She got us to a place where, you know, we have this concept, we have this booklet that she was there championing during her time at Borough Hall, at Brooklyn Borough Hall. Everybody keep that in mind, because we're gonna come back to where it is now. Melvin, so like the others on this panel, Los Sudes is your home, many of the other ones. What did you see or not see happening in the community that may have inspired you to make this film, and what did you learn?
Well, that's a big question, because when my family first arrived in the United States, we came into Williamsburg, and I was 10 years old. I won't tell you how long ago that was, but but this I can say, the streets were so unsafe. Diana mentions how unsafe it was. Well, I want to multiply that by 10. It was scary. You had to pray to go into junior high school 50 and pray when you were leaving, because it was just awful. And for anybody who wants to get a little taste of what that felt like, in 1984, director Diego Echevarria did a film called Los Sudes, and it's now playing a BAM, I think. And it's a real opportunity for you to get a feeling of 5 lives, not all showing all the positives, because we had a lot of positives, but these are showing some examples of how people were living at the time. And it was scary. But at the same time, there were dynamic families, dynamic parents, great teachers. I felt very thankful that I grew up there. Even though I had to run to the house and, run out of the house and all those kinds of things. But as a filmmaker, I have to look back at a moment when, in my life, when I was probably 11 years old, and I went to right by the park that Diana has envisioned for BQGreen. And there's another little park called Green Grass, which is about 4 blocks away, which is a little patch of grass. I'm talking about probably 100 feet by 150 feet. As kids, we thought that grass was like being in a ballpark. It was like the most wonderful thing. Wow, grass, for real. And the idea that we cherish that little piece of land gives me a vision of how it would be if we had a much broader park, a much bigger park, a safer park. We were on the side of the highway playing baseball. It was really dangerous, but as kids, it was the only place that had grass. So it was a big deal. And now as a filmmaker, when I got brought in by Kate Bernstein and Dewey Thompson to talk with Diana about making a documentary, which is what you saw is only 7 minutes worth of a much larger documentary. This is just 7 minutes worth to give you a hint, a little taste of what's there. I just discovered that the community is dynamic, that the community could pull off this big dream, this impossible dream. But at the same time, I discovered that there were people in the community who don't want this to happen for the most bizarre reason. They don't want it to happen because it will bring in gentrification. And others didn't want it to happen because then they won't have housing. And it's like all these fears that get pushed on people by politicians and also by leaders who have no courage. And one of the things I love about this project is that it's giving us all an opportunity to dream realistically. Meaning, this is not just happening here or it's going to happen here, but it's happening in Dallas, it's happening in Atlanta, Georgia, it's happening in many places around the country. The difference is they had major support from government, and here we've had people who say they want to help, but through the documentary interviewing people, they just say that publicly. They really don't believe it should be done because to them that's a risk, giving poor people a park. That's pretty much it. So I've learned a lot. I'm not going to become a politician, but this much I have to say, the community is resilient. And the people in the community make me feel very proud that I came from that group, because people will do anything if they're led correctly, if they're told honestly what we could do and what we cannot do. So for those who probably, I don't know, I had my picture, the video was moving kind of weird. Mine, maybe it happened to some other people. They should see it again. But I've come to the conclusion that this is a possibility, but it's also a possibility for bonding us all. It's not the park, is the reason for being together, is making this park. So yeah.
Melvin, you have my vote, even if you're not running. I've decided that I'm going to vote for you.
I'm leaving that to Diana.
Thank you so much. And I don't think I could have said it better myself. This is really bigger than a park, right? This is a bigger issue. This is a bigger project that can bond everyone, which I think actually brings us right to Vaughn. So Vaughn Perry, I didn't give you the appropriate introduction, so I'm going to try that one more time. So Vaughn Perry is the Equitable Development Manager at the 11th Street Bridge Park, in DC. He oversees and implements the deliverables for the Equitable Development Plan, which he'll tell us a little bit about. Vaughn is a DC native who's a resident and homeowner in Ward 8 for over 16 years. So he knows, not only is he part of this project, but this project is happening in his community. And so, Vaughn, you've heard everybody talk about this beautiful idea of BQGreen. And Melvin said it best when he said, this is happening in other places. Here's an example of that. So for us, at least for me, I'll speak for me, your project stands as a beacon for what can happen when all stakeholders, especially the community, is centered in the conversation and leads in determining what's needed. What did it take for you to get there? What is the 11th Street Park Bridge? What did it take to get there? And what can you share with the rest of us about how possible the BQGreen project is?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you all for having me. And I applaud you all for all of the work that you've done already. I will start with a lot of the similarities that I see between our project and the BQGreen project. And we've, although they have taken different approaches to really towards some of the similar goals, I think as long as you already mentioned it, Teresa, that community engagement is a part of it, then you can get the results that you're looking to get. So as I say that, so the 11th Street Bridge Park, the idea was to repurpose an old vehicular bridge to create a pedestrian park from it. And there was a pretty much there, the bridge goes across what is the Anacostia River. And for a long time, that river has served as a divider between the city of the haves and the have-nots. One example is there's 900 feet of water that separate what's considered east of the river from west of the river. And the median value difference of the homes is about $450,000 difference. And so, there's a lot of disparity, and that's just one example of the huge disparities between those communities. And for a long time, the east of the river communities have been neglected, have been marginalized. Promises have been made that haven't been held up. And so we really looked at this park as a way to connect the river. To connect the communities from both sides of the river. And while it didn't start off as a response to environmental justice, once we really were engaging with the community around like what the design of the project should look like, what the amenities of the park, like literally, like everything that you see, all of the pictures you see, from the canoeing to an outdoor play space, to a outdoor environmental education center, to a amphitheater. All of those ideas came directly from the community. The community was involved. We had a team of a design team that overviewed the design brief and had input and can speak with all of the designers that put forth, the bid. And so from the very beginning, it was really important for us to engage with the community and not just in the bricks and mortar, right? And so what we learned was not only was the bricks and mortar important, but whether we were looking across our city at other parts of the community where development had come in and really displaced a lot of people, or just hearing directly from the community, like, listen, Melvin mentioned it earlier, how there are these real fears. And I would say, oftentimes rightfully so in those communities, because, when they start to see the cranes come up, there's been a history of families and generations of families getting pushed out. And so we wanted to be able to address those issues. And so we engaged directly with the community to come up with strategies where we could not only invest directly in the community, but we could be looking at ways to mitigate people getting displaced, those indigenous residents. Like, as this amenity was coming to the community, we didn't want them to not benefit from it. Those are the first people that should be able to benefit from the community. So we worked with stakeholders, had a number of meetings to come up with what's called our equitable development plan. They are 34 strategies that focus between housing, workforce, small business, and cultural equity. And there are a number of different partners that help us to implement those different strategies. Where we are now, we are about 30% design of the actual project. We look at this as like a $130 million project. So so it's about $70 million budgeted for the bricks and mortar. And then it's about $60 million for the equitable development strategies that we've already raised. And so total, we've raised close to 100 million out of $130 million. So we still got a ways to go, but we've come a very long way. And while
Don, can I just ask you, where is that coming from? Public sources? Is it private?
Yeah.
Is it a combination?
I was about to go there. So
sorry, I got very excited.
Worries. Yeah. So with a lot of the equitable development strategies, those have come through philanthropic dollars, like so LISC, which is Local Initiative Support Collaborative. LISC is all throughout the country, but they have a chapter in DC. They pledged $50 million to the same 1 mile radius around our future Bridge Park. We had about 3 years ago, we were awarded the Pro Neighborhood Grant through JP Morgan Chase, which was for $5 million. And so all of those dollars went to equitable development strategies. On the bricks and mortar side, we have about $38 million that have been pledged from the city. And then we are also looking at things like new market tax credits, as well as naming opportunities for organizations or for companies that want to have their name associated, with a part of the park. And so those are for the most, there are a different range of funds, but I would mention that there is certainly, when we go to funders, they are often looking at, okay, well, what is the city doing? And so it was really important that we can show, well, we already have $38 million pledged from the city, because that allows for those big time philanthropists to say, oh, okay, well, if the city's buying in, then that means, it looks like it can really happen, and I'm going to put my name behind, or put my money behind this as well. And so I think it's an important point to underline that I don't know that something of this magnitude could get done without the city support.
That is well taken point there. Thank you for that one.
The last thing that I would share, and I think is total amazing to hear all of you all that have come from the community and you're doing this amazing work, right? And that is like, you all's project is literally a community-led project. Like the people that are leading the charge of folks that grew up in that community. And while from the beginning, the Bridge Park was not necessarily started by folks that were in the community, but they have done everything that they could do to engage with the residents who live in that community. Me being one of them, right? Like for years, I heard as a resident, I heard about what I used to call this mythical Bridge Park, and I'm like, yep, it's no way that's going to happen. You know, we've had so many promises that have been given us, that have been broken. But once I really got a chance to see the legitimate and authentic community engagement that the Bridge Park team was working, and this opportunity came available for me to join the staff, I said, you know, I want to be a part of that because I want to be able to have a seat at the table and I want to be able to make a difference in my community. And they have been very, very intentional about hiring from within the community. And so that, you know, when you look at our staff, there's like 4 quadrants that are connected to the Anacostia River, and there's somebody hired from each one of those quadrants. And so that's, you know, that's been intentional so that we can have as many real voices from the community as possible. And I'll end it with on that note, looking forward to, you know, hearing directly from a lot of the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I think that leads us really, really perfectly into our last but not least guest panelist, Jonathan from M&T Bank. I think, you know, you've heard from everybody here. Current events and especially philanthropy is really excited about a lot of the topics that we talked about tonight: social justice, equity, environmental justice, public health, open space, right, community development. What responsibility do you think philanthropy has to address some of these issues? What are the opportunities? Can you speak a bit to kind of how that fits into this picture, the funding picture?
Sure. So as a Queensonite, all my life, I've spent days on the BQE, and I know exactly just from being in traffic, that spot and sort of why the smog and the asthma effects of the community. Obviously, working and then sort of being in the community in Brooklyn, I can obviously see it as well. I should say that this idea is not radical, right? And I don't think it's new or avant-garde. You know, there's countless, and even the most recent sort of philanthropic sort of endeavor, which is Hudson Yards, right? Like Hudson Yards was nothing there, and then you have Bloomberg and you have big philanthropists coming in, and they have this cultural icon of the shed, right? We have the Brooklyn Queens waterways that have been expanded through the high-rise buildings that have been built there over the last 10 to 12 years. So as the New York City skyline has moved into the boroughs, so has the open space and the amenities. And so that has brought in obviously a push out in gentrification, but it's not radical. And then, you know, the last big one I can think of is Dumbo Park, right? If somebody would have told me 15 years ago that Dumbo Park was going to be what it is today, I would have laughed. I would never have expected it, right? I think in those examples, the biggest thing that we see is that there is some large money-centered developer, or there's a large money-centered lobbyist behind some of these endeavors that unfortunately has no community buy-in or very limited community buy-in, and it just has a vision for profiting over dollars, right? And so philanthropy has an obligation to sort of counteract and counterbalance that exact nature, because we understand that communities got displaced, and philanthropy has a role, particularly now through COVID, understanding that the disparate impacts of a pandemic and how these issues continue to, exponentially affect our Black and Brown communities. So the role of philanthropy is to consistently push the levers in the community's benefit. My role in my institution is to be an advocate for the communities of which we serve, both internally and externally. And I think the community's job is to push people like myself, both corporate philanthropists, private foundations, and NGOs, nonprofit sort of partnerships, to sort of think about this in a way that's driven by the community as a collective voice, and as opposed to sort of being driven by one developer or one scheme or one schematic that's going to help benefit sort of this new redevelopment of these communities. You know, for the BQGreen project, it makes absolute sense for philanthropy to get behind it. It's something that, again, if somebody was pitching me Hudson Yards 6 years ago that wasn't Bloomberg, no one would have paid attention to them, right? And so it's regrettable that it's taken 12 to 15 years to get this project to where it is now, you know, because it's community driven. And so obviously this is an issue of social justice, environmental justice as well. And philanthropy has usually taken a blind eye to these systemic issues, right? Philanthropy doesn't necessarily want to address systemic oppression. They want to sort of, you know, provide the band-aids to help the communities to sort of get through the next day. And if this was Hurricane Sandy, this would be an easy fix, right? It'd be a quick $5 million from everybody, and then we move on to the next thing. And so the longevity of this project is something that needs more of the intentionality from philanthropy, right? The longevity of the work that this body is doing on this panel is exactly the reason for why philanthropy needs to do something, because this is an issue that has been generational, multi-generational. And so if we talk about systemic oppression, if we talk about systemic racism, if we talk about systemic poverty, systemic green space is part of this as well. And so I'll just end to sort of move the conversation to the Q&A, but you know, philanthropy needs to be pushed by the community partners. Community voice is where we respond to, and it's holding our feet to the fire as well. You know, everybody has a role and everybody has a responsibility, and our elected officials have one role to play, and the community advocates for them or advocates to them. And it's the same thing for corporate and private foundations. It needs to happen.
Jonathan, just thank you for that really important perspective. And what I appreciate about that is you come to this with the eye of a community organizer, right? Which is really, really helpful, I think. Vaughn said before we moved to you that it's really important to have public support behind this, that the public support oftentimes pushes philanthropists and private support. Do you agree with that? Does it help when you have a council member or mayor or whoever it is, borough president, that says, yes, we're behind this, either financially or yes, we're behind making sure that this gets support? Does that help?
I think it helps, and I think it's a matter of time, right? Because of the last 4 years of this administration, the tone from the top is that these projects and these issues are not important. I'm personally very confident that with the Biden administration coming in, where you know, environmental reform is top of mind, this is going to be something that could be pushed. And so it's a matter of holding feet to the fire and capitalizing on the moment and knowing when the moment's coming. And in my perspective, if we have heavy investment from the federal government to sort of make a new tunnel between New Jersey and New York, to push these green sort of endeavors, then this is the time to do it. And again, next year we have a mayoral election. We have 2/3 of the city council coming in as freshmen sort of city council people. Now's the time.
That's really helpful. So just before we get to the Q&A, I would love for Diana to close this kind of story, right? So I said, Diana, hold on to telling us where it is now. And we've heard from all of these amazing panelists who I think not only grounded us in the history of this and what it means for a whole community, but also as individuals who live through this, but how this can be done in different spaces and how it's being shown that it's done in different spaces with being community led, and then how philanthropy can play a role in this. So where are we right now with this project so that we can encourage everybody to sign on to this?
Thank you, Teresa. I just wanted to share, you know, some of the short-term successes, right? Because this is a major project. We can't just glide by what are those quick fix that we've been able to achieve, right? And so I'm happy to report that we have planted what the study called for, which were 350 trees planted, right? And that's a cost associated, right? Each tree cost $1,000. an average of $1,000. So we're talking about, $350,000 worth of investment. We've had successes with traffic mitigation to address what would be safer crossing with families, wheelchair accessibility. Again, those are associated dollars that count towards the project, supporting the project. We had what were the opportunity to be able to today advocate what would be this particular film, right? The documentary that costs money, and that there's a value to that. This documentary is just the first, and it needs to continue. And without the funding, it's not possible. The opportunity to be able to now, because it has taken this long, 15 years later, we're in the space of what was the cost of $100 million in a 3-block stretch is now increasing in dollars. We don't know how much, and so we have to refresh those numbers. We are in the midst of speaking to many different partners to be able to, and M&T Bank is one of those individual entities. So I'm excited to hear the commitment that M&T is making to the social justice movement and environmental reform, and the role it wants to play as far as foundation money across the board. Only 5% of foundation money, philanthropic dollars, comes into Brooklyn, right? That's a fact. We have to change those numbers. And, the upgrade of the cost benefit analysis is necessary more so today than ever before, because the cost of construction has gone up. And, Vaughn just confirmed, right? It's a typical project cost like this is between $130 million to $150 million. Our particular plan had called for what would be a community center, right? With a pool. People wanted to, I got requests such as a roller coaster, from kids, right? They knew how to think big. And it was wonderful to see the excitement from our youth participating and owning this project. And so that takes work, and we're organizing to make sure that what Jonathan says, seizing the moment and knowing when it's right to strike. And so we're ready to strike.
So with that, Diana, we're sisters in this, right? And I think we'll continue to push this forward. I encourage everyone to visit bqgreen.org to get involved. You can sign up, click on join us, sign up so that we can move forward, keep you updated on the progress here. But the group has a lot of work to do. I think, Diana, you mentioned we need to update the feasibility study. We have a new federal administration that we need to get to now. So there's a lot of work to do, but I think I want to end it by saying that, these are big dreams, but as Vaughn has shown and others have shown, Francis, you talked about this long road for for Williamsburg and the history of our activism. It's possible. And I know that this group is going to see it happen. And I'm really excited about that. And I'm happy to be a champion as a Los Sudes kid myself, but also as a person who cares about what happens in New York and my community. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over now to Katie, I think, who has a few things to say. Katie, do you want me to ask questions? There are a few questions here that I can direct to the panelists. Do you want me to do that before we switch it to you? So there's a question, I think, for Diana, although I'd be interested to hear if there are other thoughts. What was Bloomberg's reasoning when he rejected the plan to platform a park over the BQE? Since you were in this since the beginning, what did that administration say in response to this proposal?
So I just wanted to share, there was a moment during the, maybe days before the vote of the 2005 rezoning, where I asked for the open space to be addressed because I didn't hear back from anyone. And it was commented by the administration that it was too late. We didn't know this was important to you. And it was strange because how do you create a plan where the open space has always been a part of the conversation, but it was never applied to this part of the neighborhood. And it was infuriating, but I needed to make sure that we didn't wait for what was that administration. There was no reasoning other than, it wasn't a priority. And this was clear to me when we started to engage the administration and its DOT commissioner, because this is an incredible task of interagency coordination.
It's very complicated. It's a complex project. Yeah.
Very much so. And you don't need just the city. You have to have the cooperation of the state as well. So we're talking about the governor's office, the mayor's office, and big federal dollars have to be infused here, right? And so that requires what would be the city to be on board, because the federal government doesn't want to give money if there is no support, green light, so to speak, from the city and state. So that is the reason why that I can conclude, right? But the political will, right? I want to make sure people understand we have to engage our elected officials to have the political will to want to get these types of projects done, that they have to make sure they don't see the hardship, but the benefit.
I agree with that. Thank you. The second question that I think was answered a bit by Jonathan is, the concept of bridging over the BQE has been around for a long time. It's been shot down by City Hall and the council over time. Given that we're in a pretty precarious financial situation, why do we think we have a better chance today of approval? And I think a little bit of that was answered by Jonathan in capitalizing on the renewed interest and excitement around social justice, environmental advocacy, and those kinds of issues that have been brought to the forefront for many different reasons. That I think answers that, but does anybody else want to add anything to why you think there's a better chance today than there might have been before? Francis or Diana?
I think the reality that we are living with what COVID has really shown us in terms of what I feel is really a moral imperative to really address in a very profound and sustainable way the issue of racial and social inequity in this and systemic racism in this country. And I think you see it played out in all of the ways that we've just talked about in terms of the example of Los Sudes, and even in terms of what clearly is a viable solution and sustainable solution, and why it hasn't happened for 15 years. I think there is a heightened awareness, but I also think an understanding of the moral imperative to really make this happen. And the way in which that can happen is really in terms of intentionality around directing resources, money and resources to community-led solutions and community coalitions. And I think we've heard it and we are hearing it, and we've known it because we've been doing it for decades. But I think this is the moment to really, amplify and really use the attention and I think the goodwill, but also I think the consciousness that people are having, and particularly I think, foundations and donors to really say this is the moment and this is the time to start to undo or mitigate that injustice that has been going on. And I think the BQGreen is a amazing, would be an amazing investment in it.
I think you, Francis, your point is well taken, which is if COVID has shown us anything is that we have to do something, right? And I think that the BQGreen project very much points to what do you do when you think about a community and community health holistically in a way that is not just about investing in buildings or investing in, you know, anything else? What do you do when you you allow a community to lead a process that on the other end reveals that people are conscious of what it means to live with dirty air, with asthma? You get led on a process that, you know, that highlights the need for things like the BQGreen or the 11th Street Bridge project or park, excuse me. So I think that's right, and I think COVID is a good indicator there. So 2 more questions. Who will be responsible for the maintenance of the project once it's built? I wish we were at the point where we knew that answer. That would be amazing. Do you anticipate a Friends organization or conservancy for both maintenance and fundraising? Obviously, we are in a difficult financial period, but if we can think that far, what do we envision in terms of the park maintenance? Would there be a Friends group who would lead that? You can say, let's just get the park built first and then we'll figure it out. But any thoughts there, Diana?
Well, I do want to share that there's an opportunity right now. I'm sure many people are paying attention to the Triple Cantilever project, which is in Brooklyn Heights. And the Brooklyn Heights community recently had an opportunity to have what would be its own hearing around the project and creating what would be this infrastructure to benefit the community, similar to the way it resembles what would be the BQGreen project. Needless to say, the Brooklyn Heights community, very politically involved and of wealth, was able to mobilize in ways that, you know, we have been trying to for the last 15 years. And in one hearing where the local council member has expressed disappointment that it took what would be this hearing to address what is the same call from a community that is immigrant-based, Latino, and asking for the same thing. And so this has now invigorated what would be a conversation. We are trying to understand, you know, what are the possibilities if we were to work together to have this cross-community collaboration. So we're in the works of understanding and envisioning and planning what would be further discussions. And, you know, in a perfect world, we could have already built this in 15 years later. Today, I think that there's an opportunity under this new, new administration nationally to be able to push for greater projects, infrastructure projects like this, with the social justice in mind and environmental justice in mind, nationally, right? That it's not just our community. I think there are similarities, and, you know, seeing the work and effort that Vaughn's 11th Street Bridge Park has been able to accomplish to today gives us that hope. And so we need to coalesce as a nation and find what would be other sisters and brothers in the same sphere like we're living to be able to achieve that. And there's always going to be crisis. You know, crisis makes us stronger. You know, I'm living proof of that. And if I let crisis take over what would be succeeding in life, then we would not have gotten this far. And so I stand up to crisis.
We're New York, right? We got this.
You know, I do want to, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, please.
I want to say that everybody bats an eye and questions every detail and has so much skepticism when it comes to public projects or community-based initiatives or community-led sort of endeavors. But no one bats an eye when it's one wealthy or a lobbying group or anybody else, right? And so to all the skeptics, I would say that no one thought Park Slope was going to be Park Slope the way it is today 40, 50 years ago, right? Nobody saw the Bronx gentrifying the way it's gentrifying today, right? So what's the difference, right? And I think when you have outside money coming into our city and gentrifying, developing, trying to turn the buck, right, for profit, everything feels fine. But unfortunately, when it's community folks who are here advocating for their own resources, for their own sort of well-being, that's when everybody seems to have a problem. And I think it's part of my job in philanthropy, part of our job as social leaders to sort of say, we need to hold everybody accountable, and this too can be possible, and we can find the money for it. There's absolutely no reason why this can't get done, but the big soccer stadium in the Bronx where the Red Bulls can, right? That it makes no sense. So sorry.
No, that's the point. I mean, look, the High Line was a set of elevated tracks, like a park, right? Brooklyn Bridge Park was a set of piers. That is also a park. So I think your point is well taken, which is prioritizing projects such as these that are not only have the will of wealthy or different kinds of communities, but understanding the bigger picture on why these projects are important and inserting that same will and that same drive to create this, I think, is what's needed here. So Jonathan, I really do appreciate that you added that. That we have a few other questions, but I'd love to, that I think that we want to share. I'd love to end though with one major question, and then maybe we can answer the two of the other questions, because I think they're a bit more involved offline, if that's okay. Katie, is that okay with you? So I'm gonna ask what so far is my favorite question, which is, how can students at Williamsburg High School become involved in a project such as this?
Well, I guess I could start that, only because, again, as I talked about in terms of our practice, and certainly in the most recent campaign, our Ann West Ide, you know, it's citizen science. You know, it's a citizen science project, and so the air quality monitoring that we worked with Pratt and the Commoner Center at Queens College actually worked with our students at the Aponte Academy for Peace and Justice, and they did the part of the monitoring, and also our young people here at our youth center, our leadership center, WLC, Williamsburg Leadership Center. I mean, and I think not only did they do the monitoring, but I think it gave them an opportunity to really be able to then articulate what the issue was, and then be part of the solution with the other community engagement pieces and the rest of the community residents and organizations that have been part of it. I think it also then informs curriculum. It also informs the way young people, and I think there's a real tie here in terms of education and our educational system, and the commitment to nurture responsible and dedicated citizens, right, is really to engage young people proactively in understanding what they're learning to what they can then take and use as skills and a power to make changes. And I think that's in our history and certainly up to the present in terms of many of the major campaigns that we've been involved in. And just to point to what Jonathan was saying, I think, you know, and it speaks to this, is really, it's important for investors to look at the capacity and legacy of communities to really make change when they're looking at how and in which way they're going to invest. And certainly in a community like this, there is a long history and powerful history of change making by the community and community leaders, and young people at the forefront of that.
I love it. So I'm just going to reiterate, and then I'll turn it over to Katie. If you want to keep tabs on this, because it will happen, we would love for you to go to bqgreen.org and sign up. If you want to join the movement, young and old, all community members, we would love that. I think this is a community driven project that will need everybody's hands to push it forward. So I encourage you to go to bqgreen.org to sign up to keep posted on updates. And obviously, I think this group will probably always be happy to talk about this. So Katie, I don't know if there's an opportunity, we can collect some of the questions after and maybe share with the panelists, and there's an opportunity to connect, to either share folks' email addresses afterwards and any follow-up. I think we would probably welcome that. I'm speaking for all of you, but I imagine we would welcome that, yes? Okay. Thank you all. Honestly, an honor to be able to talk to you all about this and for all of you to weigh in on this important project. It's personal for me, but I also, as just a human being, I think that is this conversation is one that's happening in many different communities around the country. And I think it's just as important for those communities as it is for ours to be heard when we say we need clean air, we need environmental justice, we need social justice, we need equity when it comes to public health. So thank you for participating. Vaughn, thank you for coming all the way from DC to share that with us. I know it's you're on Zoom, but still, you traveled a little. And with that, I'll turn it over to Katie to close us out.
Yep, thanks, Teresa. So just to wrap it up, I want to thank our lovely Teresa for moderating the conversation, and Lynn Delso, who we didn't introduce before. She is the backbone of North Brooklyn Parks Alliance. Melvin, Francis, Diana, Jonathan, Vaughn, thank you so much for joining. And so you certainly have another opportunity to ask questions, because we're going to do a follow-up conversation to this panel. So Francis talked a lot about El Puente's initiatives to study and analyze and advocate around the air quality issues. Other organizations in our community, like North Brooklyn Neighbors, are also doing similar work. And so we really want to focus on that and environmental justice as an issue in North Brooklyn early in 2021. So you'll hear about that soon, and we'll be able to do a little deep dive into that issue then. Another shout out to the continuation of our panel series for our next panel on January 21st, where we're going to discuss the Open Streets Initiative that many in North Brooklyn and across New York City have been involved in. And just to mention and piggyback off of some of Francis's answer to the question, why now? Here in North Brooklyn, there's a lot of conversation around the BQE, right? There, North Brooklyn Parks Alliance just finished a 7-acre park under the BQE, under the Kosciuszko Bridge. There are conversations among our community with the Make Meeker Move, that's also under the BQE, and then Brooklyn Heights, and then, this BQGreen. So I think the desperation for new open space, combined with innovation in landscape design and just infrastructure improvements, really presents this in 2021 as an opportunity to shine and move forward. So I want to thank all of you for joining. We had over 100 participants today. So I think that the community is and can be galvanized around this, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. So happy holidays to everybody. We'll see you in 2021.